Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Stasha and Becky's here. Welcome to Spill the Tea with S&B. Today, we're going to talk a lot about graduation and also just transitioning to really anything in life. We know that once students graduate, there's usually kind of a transition period that comes with that. Sometimes there may be some uncertainty as well. And that's really applicable to anything in life, whether you are starting a new job, you're leaving a job, you are going into a new career field. Maybe you're switching from working a 9 to 5 to doing a passion project or starting a business. There are all different kinds of transitions that we go through in life. And sometimes the transition process is similar, whether it's graduation or a life experience. So, Becky, I want to get started today. First, I just want to talk to you a little bit more about how you felt when your graduation was approaching, when your time at university or college was coming to an end, and maybe what were some worries that you had during that period?
Yeah, so that was a big time. When I got my bachelor's degree, of course, I was excited. I was excited for the next chapter, but I was also scared. And I was also really sad because I knew I was leaving a chapter of my life and people. And it happened. There were people that I was very close to that I never saw again. So there's a lot of emotions that came with it. And I think my biggest fear was, will I find a job? I graduated in December instead of the typical May, and I was in school to be a teacher. They hire teachers in May and June, not December. So I knew it would be very difficult to find a job. So I kind of had to think about other things I could do for the next 6 or 8 months until I secured a teaching position. So it was kind of scary because I was ready, but the workforce wasn't ready for me yet, I guess I could say. How about you? What was your biggest fear?
Yeah, so when I graduated with my bachelor's, for me it was I think I'm not going to say extra difficult. It was very difficult because not only was I moving on from school, I also was a college athlete. So I
Mm.
was losing two really big parts of my identity at the same time. I was losing the student identity and the competitive athlete identity, and it was very hard for me. I had a decent period of time where I felt a little lost and confused and sometimes sad because I was trying to figure out who I was if I wasn't a student and if I wasn't an athlete. And then I also faced that situation of not only where am I going to work, but what am I going to do? Because I had a lot of uncertainty around my career field, being completely transparent and honest. When I graduated, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I got a job working for Apple. I really liked the tech industry and I liked working with people. I was a professor while I was getting my master's. There was a program where you could teach and they would help pay for your master's. I also did some sports broadcasting internships with CBS. I was coaching at a local college. So there were all of these different things that I was doing to try to figure out what I wanted to do. So the first part was, what do I want to do? Then the second part is, I need to find a job, a career. I need to find a job in my career
Yeah.
field. So it was really hard navigating an identity crisis, what I wanted to do, and how I wanted to move forward. So that was definitely an adjustment period for me.
Yeah, yeah. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to teach. But at that time, like now, the teaching field's wide open. But at that time, it was very difficult to secure a teaching job. So I'm like you, I had several different things. I had several different irons in the fire. I was substitute teaching. I was teaching homebound students in the evenings, and I was waiting tables just to kind of pay the bills. For me, it was also hard to go from being an independent student. I had to go back home and live with my parents because I didn't have that big job. Um, that was really hard to go from, living on campus and being an independent student to going back home for a little while. I didn't stay there very long, but for a little while, and I had to kind of revert back to the rules my parents had. Um, so that was hard too. So how did you kind of transition from a student to a professional career focus? Like, how did you go back home or did you go right out on your own? How did you do it?
Yeah, I would say that to be honest again, I stumbled for a little bit. I did. It took time to work my way through it and I really wish that I had mentors or someone like you and me to just share share, hey, this is what I did, give it a try because that would have sped up the process.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of fumbled my way through it. And I luckily went straight into my master's. I think if I had taken a break, I don't know that I would have went back because I would have had that freedom. And I didn't go back home. So I stayed there, did my master's, worked there for a little while, moved to a couple of different places, and then eventually I did make my way back home. But I needed to figure out who I was outside of being a student athlete. And luckily I feel blessed that I did all of these different jobs because it showed me exactly what I wanted and what I didn't want. And truthfully, being a professor, I didn't want to do that. It wasn't even on the plate for me as an idea for a career until I had that opportunity where they said, "Hey, if you teach a couple of classes for the university, we'll help you with your master's degree." And originally, I just did it because it was going to help. It was a means to get that paid for, and I ended up loving it. And so, I guess some advice would be one, try everything. If an opportunity comes across and you're like, I'm not sure about this, I say just give it a try because you don't know what you're going to fall in love with or what you're going to be passionate about until you do it or until you try it. And also,
Mm-hmm.
I think internships are really important. I wish that I had done more volunteering or interning or shadowing when I was getting my bachelor's because I very quickly would have realized that teaching K through 12 wasn't for me, that sports broadcasting wasn't for me, that the corporate life wasn't for me. And it took me longer to realize those things, which if I would have just taken a little bit of time to mentor shadow intern, I would have known that and I could have had a more clear direction. And then the
Mm-hmm.
other thing too for me was making sure that I stayed connected with friends and family and also joined activities outside. So like local softball, slow pitch leagues, hiking groups, walking groups, finding a nice church where you can meet people, stuff like that. Just to keep you connected. Otherwise, you could become secluded, and that just kind of makes you feel worse in the end. So those are just a couple of tips that I have. What about you?
See, I was different. I didn't get my master's degree. I'd been a teacher for 8 to 10 years, and I went back
Mm.
to get my master's degree because I realized through teaching homebound students, because I taught a lot of high school kids, that I kind of was more inclined to want to teach high school. I'd been teaching little kids for a while, and also it created more opportunities in the teaching world in general. So I went back later to get my master's degree. So that I didn't have a lot of sadness or anxiety or fear completing that because it was more of a milestone for me. But it did kind of lead me to a new career and a new path. But I mean, when I first got started, when I first graduated and got out there, I think I had a lot of hurdles to overcome, and I wasn't prepared for the business professional world. I had no clue how to interview. I'd interviewed for jobs like campus jobs or, service jobs, but a teaching position, like a real professional position, I went into my first interview and there were 14 people sitting there and I was not prepared for that. And it just kind of made me a nervous mess and I botched the whole thing. So I don't, I didn't take advantage of all the things that the college provided for career advancement and to help you with your future career. And I wish I had done that. So I had to learn how to interview and how to create a resume and all those things that I kind of didn't even think about until it was too late. And so I kind of had to step back, and that was a huge hurdle for me. Did you have any hurdles that you encountered when you first stepped into the professional world?
That's a great example. For me, absolutely. So I was on the younger end. I started school a little bit earlier. I was like when I went into college, I was 17 for a few months. So my parents had to sign all my paperwork. So, which was, a little embarrassing. But so when I just always felt really young. And when I graduated, I also felt young in the sense of I didn't have work experience because as an athlete, we weren't able to work. We weren't able to have jobs. And I know some people will say, well, being a college athlete is a job. Yes, but no. Like it is a job because you work a lot of hours, you put a lot of hard work and dedication and discipline into it. But no, because you're not learning a professional work environment. You're not learning how to interview. You're not learning how to show off your skills or try to persuade them to hire you. And so when I left, I didn't have any of those skills. I didn't know how to create a resume. I didn't know what a cover letter was, references. I didn't know how to interview. I didn't even know what the process was for applying for jobs. Um, and there are a lot of resources that colleges offer, but also if you're not a student and you're not in college, maybe you're graduating from high school or maybe you're just switching from one field to another, there are a lot of free resources out there now on the internet that you can use. Um, AI is also a wonderful tool. It can help you with your resume. It can help you with the skills that you need to tailor depending on what job you're applying for. So definitely utilize those skills so that you're not, wading through water trying to figure out what you're doing. And I do wish that I had prepared myself professionally more ahead of time. But when you're young and you're in school, that's not something that you really think about. You think, I'll figure that out when it comes. One day at a time, I'll figure that out later. But yeah, definitely take advantage of resources, especially when it comes to interviewing and public speaking, because essentially an interview is your public speaking. You have to learn how to relate and how to have one-on-one communication. And like you said, I when I walked into my first panel interview, I was terrified. If you're one person interviewing for a job in front of five or six experts or professionals in the field, that is a really intimidating situation.
Mhm.
So I think it's really important to learn, how to control your stress, anxiety, how to prepare for something like that, down to how to dress even. Because if you're not taught, professionalism and how to dress for an interview, that's another thing that you might not be prepared for.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that was huge for me. And I wish I had taken advantage. And, I won't age myself here, but the internet wasn't really a thing when I finished college. So, but there were resources. But my young self just thought, well, I'll just walk in and charm them and get the job. And that's not what happened. And so those resources that are out there now are amazing, but you have to know what to look for and what advice is the best advice. So you have to be careful, and get good help, good resources. So I guess the best advice I could have given my young self, because I was like you, I was 17 when I went to college. I was always the youngest, and I always felt kind of behind everybody else, and so I was always striving to keep up or, do what everybody else was doing. So I wish I could go back and tell myself, these are the things you should do. And one of them would be to really search out and look for resources that would help me beyond college and make connections, with professors or business people that can help you network and find positions. I was a teacher, a student to be a teacher, and I was in classrooms observing and working all the time as part of my coursework, but I didn't really network with the people around me. And I think I'd go back and tell myself, these people will help you in the future if you get to know them now. So I think I'd be less of the shy kid in the corner watching and observing and be more outgoing about meeting people and getting those connections that I was going to need after graduation. What about you? What would you tell your past self?
Networking is huge. I'm so glad that you touched on that because, again, that wasn't something I was even thinking about. And I wish that
Hmm.
I had because as you get into the professional field and you start to meet people and you do start to network, you can have different profiles like LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a good opportunity for you to connect professionally with people. And there, I'm sure there are other sites out there for that as well. Or physically going to things like a lot of cities and a lot of towns have business meetings or they have get-togethers, or you can go to a conference even and start to network with people in your field. And like Becky said, even in your class, those people are all studying for the most part. When you get to those upper division classes, studying for the same field as you. And one that gives you references, and two that might also open up other job opportunities for you because I can't tell you how many people now within my network will reach out and say, "Hey, do you know somebody for this instructional design position? Hey, do you know a professor looking for this? Or hey, do you know somebody in the business field that would be good for this position?" Or even coaching, like, "Hey, I need a coach for a softball team." And the more you network with people, the more those opportunities present themselves. So, like Becky said, I highly recommend starting your networking and just your collection of friends in the professional field early on. And there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. And also, advice for myself too would have been to give myself grace because no matter how much you prepare, yes, you're going to benefit yourself and help yourself. You will probably still fail along the way, you are probably still going to fail. You might even have to interview for 20 jobs before you get a single offer, and that's okay, and that's normal. And trust the process, right? Because whatever you're supposed to be in, that's going to work out for you. And to not give yourself such a hard time and to just be really graceful with yourself throughout the entire thing. Failure's okay. It's okay if you don't get the first job. It's okay if you completely fail in an interview. I can't tell you how many interviews I've left and just thought, man, I totally messed up on that. There's no way I'm going to get that job. And know that that's okay and that that's normal.
It is. It's totally normal. And those expectations when you're first jumping in there are pretty high. I know mine were. I thought I'd just get out of college, land my dream job, be making plenty of money, and it didn't happen that way. It was a year and a half later before I landed my dream job. And it took a lot of interviewing and a lot of practice. So those first few interviews, you might want to even lower your expectations to the point where you're telling yourself, this is just practice for the big job, those first few interviews, use them as practice for the big important job that's coming up because I've read before that it takes 100 applications now to get an interview. So, you consider all those applications you're filling out and all those interviews you're doing as practice for the one perfect job that will eventually come, you know. Manage your expectations, but keep at it. Don't give up. So I guess that'd be my advice to future graduates or people changing careers or whatever.
That's
Uh,
wonderful. Yeah. No,
yeah.
that's great. I think it's so important for you to keep that in mind. And I did have when I was finishing my PhD, um, some advice that was given to me was interview for the jobs, right? If a job comes across the table and you think, I don't really know that I want this job, I don't know that this is for me, still interview because that is perfect practice for you. And also, that might end up being a job that you want. My dream job, the current job that I'm in, was like that. It was a part-time gig, not making very much money, came across the table, and I thought, I'm just going to interview, get some experience, see what happens. That when I interviewed, I absolutely loved the person that was going to be my boss, and I thought, I don't really care how much I'm going to make. I want to work for her. And then very quickly I progressed and ended up full time at the company in essentially my dream job, my dream position. And had I passed on that because I thought I don't want to work here, I don't know where I would be today, but I would have passed up on such a blessing. So one, get the experience, just do the interview. And two, you might end up actually loving that job. So
Yeah,
thank you for
much pleasure.
sharing. Yes, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on this, Becky. That's all the time that we have for today, unfortunately. But if you want to talk more, feel free to comment, to chat. We would love to chat about graduation, about transition, about change, whatever it is that you might be going through. But thank you for joining Spill the Tea with S&B, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.